Welcome to Fantasy Fanline.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fantasy Fanline, the fantasy football call-in show, putting you on the air with industry experts each and every week. We are 1 week of games in the books, which means everybody is panicking, everybody's taking victory laps, the world is up in flames. We're here to break it all down for you. I am your host, Greg Scalera, here with my co-host, Sanchi Value. Sanch, how you doing, man? You off to a pretty good start. You win a couple games this week, or what's going on?
I don't want to brag, man, but week one, I went 12-0. Went 12-0, and it's all downhill from here.
Ridiculous. Look, I knew it was going to come up, so I figured I would open the door for you to bring it up. That is as impressive of a start as I think I've ever heard. And look, my guys are smashing. I don't want to take too much of a week one victory lap, but we'll do like a mid-season my guy check-in and see how it's playing out. Yeah, maybe around like week 9 or 10. But congrats on 12-0, man. That you should get a trophy, just kind of like a week one MVP trophy in the fantasy community. That's great.
Thanks, man. It's all downhill from here. I'm hoping everyone's having a great Saturday, except Juju Smith-Schuster. I'm sure we'll talk about him later. But
yeah, I said, we have a lot of managers panicking right now. Juju is among the guys that we'll be talking about later. Pretty good week for me and you on the NFL front, too, for both of our teams. The New York Giants getting a big old win over the Tennessee Titans. Brian Dable coming in with balls of thunder, which is not something that people say. I think the common saying is balls of steel, but that didn't feel like enough in the moment just now. So balls of thunder, Brian Dable. The first place Chicago Bears picking up a big win over the 49ers last week. The slip and slide bowl going to Green Bay to play the last place Packers this week. I'm looking forward to that game tomorrow. First place Bears, last place Packers. I'm going to say that at least 45 times on the show today. And, if this is your first time joining the show, we're a call-in show. We have experts on every week. The number is 618-FANLINE. You can see it up on the screen there in case you forget. 618-FANLINE, any point during the show. You got start-sit questions, trade offers that you want to pick our brains on. You want to talk about rest of season value for guys. We're here. We'll break it all down. If you just want to call us and let us know, about a bad beat this past week, we will be a sympathetic shoulder to cry on. We're here for you. We have a different guest every week. If you want to not call in and just leave a comment wherever you're watching us right now on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, you can do that. We'll see it here. We'll take your questions that way. If you don't actually want your voice on the air with us, we understand. But yeah, so like us, subscribe to us wherever you're watching us right now. We're live every Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern time on all those platforms. You can find us at Fantasy Fanline on all social media. Make sure you like and subscribe to us so that you don't miss any of these super valuable live shows on Saturdays. And visit our website, fantasyfanline.com, for a schedule of our upcoming guests and to submit a question to our mailbag. We also have a Patreon, which we sort of reintroduced last week because we got our first patron. We still just have one going strong, Alan Wu. He's going to get a shout out every week. You can also become a patron and get a shout out every week. Let's talk to Alan Wu, our one and only patron. He won his week one matchup. Let's just take a minute. Al, congratulations, Alan. Man. He went up against Jamar Chase and AJ Brown in the league we play in together, and he won. Got a big day from Gabe Davis, your guy, Patrick Mahomes, Mike Evans. Congratulations. Alan Wu, quick story about Al. He and I play in a league together where it is custom for the last place finisher of the year to buy a trophy for the first place winner. I've won that league 3 times, and I always feel weird, like reminding the last place finisher, like suddenly like, hey, I know you just lost, but also just a reminder, you got to drop like $30 on a trophy for me. So I never bring it up. The only person who ever just like remembered and did it without question was Al Wu. I got this trophy from him in 2019. This is a guy sitting on the couch. You have to go to our YouTube channel to see it if you're listening on the podcast. It says Unnecessary Toughness. That's my team. 2019 Night Owl League champs. It's got my season average points on there. And he recognizes 3rd title for Greg Scalera. That's awesome. How you do a trophy right there. Al Wu, one of the real ones. Thanks for supporting the show. Big shout out to you. Oh, there's Al Wu on YouTube watching live. With a little thanks, Doc. Al, dude, we appreciate you. Thanks for joining us. Another Al, Albert Mariquin, running in from YouTube. Good afternoon, fellas. Good afternoon. This is Al week on Fantasy Fanline. I didn't realize. Sanch, anything you want to say before we roll into the show here. I'm going to let you introduce our guest. I know you're a big fan of his. I love his content as well, but you're the one who went out and booked him, so you've earned this introduction. I'm going to hand it over.
We're bringing one of the best in the industry on today. Been following him for at least 5 years. He's one of the most interactive pages, probably the best page on Instagram, to say the least. This guy loves fantasy football, and we're happy to have him. Ari, fantasy football expert. I'm sorry, my phone's ringing. Didn't mean to screw up your introduction. I'll put it on vibrate, but welcome to Fanline, man.
Thank you guys for having me on today.
Sanch, you did a fine job introducing him, man. Ari, we're thrilled to have you. The #1 interactive fantasy football page on Instagram, where you can find him at fantasy.footballexpert. Ari, do you want to take a minute to talk about your platform and what you do over there?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a little bit everything fantasy football. I started back in 2015 as a freshman in high school, and now I just graduated from college this past May, so kind of full circle in that regard. But yeah, I mean, I respond to probably 100, 200 plus messages every day. So that's kind of what my content's not as consistent as I want it to be during the season because I'm always just answering DM instead of content. But that's kind of what I pride myself on. That's kind of how I separate myself from others. Is just responding to that high volume of questions every day during the season.
Well, that's what makes you such a valuable follow and a great fit for this format because, I say this every week. This show was started to facilitate conversation and kind of personalized advice around the context of people's situations and not necessarily just looking at a rankings list from the experts and saying, okay, this guy has this player ranked one spot ahead of my other guy, so that's going to influence my decision. It's like, no, depends on your scoring format, your roster construction, whether or not you're projected to win or lose your match. There's just so much that goes into these decisions that we feel like it's really needs to be done in a conversational setting. And there's nobody better at that than you on Instagram. So happy to have you on, man.
74.6 thousand followers, followed by some of the best in the industry. Blue check marks everywhere. That's impressive, man. We're definitely very happy to have you.
Yeah, it's not bad, Ari. We're right behind you. What are we at, like 40 on Instagram?
We got 100. I think we just
we got 100?
100th follower.
Oh man, I need to pay more attention to that. Apparently,
we're cooler on Twitter.
Yeah, we're getting there. But second year in the industry, happy to have guys like Ari coming in and talking with our listeners. So reminder, 618 Fanline if you want to get on the phone and talk with Ari for the next hour. In the meantime, we're going to take some mailbag questions. We're going to start with Steve in New York. Speaking of the sky is falling on guys that we're panicking about, what are you trying to get in return for CD Lamb at this point? And I'm going to kick this over to Ari first because I saw a recent infographic from you kind of on your thoughts about CD Lamb, and I think people need to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I get the concern after last week. Like even with Dak Prescott, there wasn't the reduction, but it was a small sample size. The one game last year, Cooper Rush started against Minnesota. Lamb caught 6 catches on 8 targets for 112 yards. Obviously, the Vikings secondary is one of the worst in the league last year, so take that how you want. But I think it's just really saying that you shouldn't, panic trade him to the point where you're trading him for like a bench player or whatever you want. Like the recent reports suggested that Dak Prescott's going to be back potentially in about a month, so he's not out for the season. I mean, a few players, if you did want to trade them that I just like, would be like Cortland Sutton, DJ Moore. If you wanted to trade for running back, James Conner, David Montgomery, guys like that. But, I feel like it's going to be tough to trade him, for those types of players at this point, unless people have that same mindset that, like you said, the sky's not falling. It's not the end of the world. He can still be viable with Cooper Rush, and then Dak should be back, maybe a little bit over a month and a half. So I'm halfway through the season. So I just wouldn't panic trade him to the point where, you're selling him for super, super low value.
Sanch, I'll check in with you in a second on that. There are some things that I'm glad you mentioned in that answer, such as Cooper Rush's performance last year. I mean, it was one start, and he threw for, 325 and 2 touchdowns. He threw the ball 40 times. That's not to say that he's going to do that every week, but I think people hear backup quarterback, especially that name that they're not familiar with, like Cooper Rush, and they think, oh, it's going to be a game manager. It's going to, hand the ball off the entire game. There are not a lot of backup quarterbacks who are capable of coming in and throwing for those numbers, even against a bad defense. So that's just to say, it's in his range of outcomes. I'm not guaranteeing, that he's going to go, what would you say, 6 of 8 for 112 with Cooper Rush. But that is a possible outcome even with a backup quarterback. All of that being said, if you sell right now, I think you're selling at his lowest potential value point for the rest of the season because people are out on Lamb right now. Of course, if he comes out this week and has a bad game again, it's probably going to sink a little bit lower, but he's still, and I couldn't believe this when I looked at it this morning. He still had 11 targets in week 1, and I was shocked because he only had 2 catches for 29 yards, but he had a 98% route participation, 26% target share. I mean, he's getting the wide receiver 1 usage. I don't know that Cooper Rush is going to come out and look any worse running this offense than Dak Prescott did last week. Sanch, what do you think about the CD situation?
Yeah, that offense looked horrible last week, but I'm with you guys. I'm holding. I'm holding, especially if you have a solid team around him. I'm not necessarily saying you have to start him. I know in competitive leagues you're going to have to, but if you have a pivot option, go for it. I've seen people on Twitter cutting CD Lamb already, which is absolutely crazy to me. I'm in a league with some guy who's really good at fantasy, actually, like loves the stuff like us, and he panic traded him for Burks, and I'm just like, okay, we'll see if that one works out. That can be back. They're saying 4 weeks. I doubt it's going to be 4 weeks. A month and change. But if you have a good enough run and you have CD Lamb ready to go for that playoff push, the Cowboys aren't going to look like they did week 1 the whole year, especially when Dak comes back. Tampa Bay, they have their number. Brady's owned them. I think 7-0 now, or 7-0, I think. And that
Sounds
defense is really good. They embarrassed him, but it's not going to be a hard matchup like that. Dak's going to come back eventually. I am not, unless you're getting a really good trade deal here. I am holding. I don't mind keeping him on the bench if you're scared, but come on, it was week 1. It's CD Lamb. You took him in the 2nd round. You don't trade him for pennies now.
Yeah, let's talk some names. Albert wants to know, would you trade Lamb for Pittman? This is an easy one for me. I would take Pittman in that side in a heartbeat.
I would do that.
Ari, do you feel the same?
I think that's the type of caliber player that I would make that trade for.
Yeah, I don't know that you'll be able to get that done right now with Pittman coming off a big week 1 and Lamb situation, but if you can make that happen, make it happen. I mean, I came out of the draft. There's only one league out of I think 9 that I'm in where I drafted CD Lamb, and as soon as I did it, I regretted passing on Pittman for him, even where I got Lamb at. It was like top of the 3rd. So I think I probably would have done that pre-Dak injury, just because I'm obnoxiously high on Pittman. He was one of my guys. I'm a big believer in him. But this, given Lamb's situation and how bad that offense looked, I'm taking Pittman there in a heartbeat. But let's talk some other names. Rest of season, would you rather have Michael Thomas than CD Lamb after week 1? Sanch,
I'd rather
Ari?
keep Lamb.
Yeah, I'd rather keep Lamb as well. I mean, obviously Thomas caught 2 touchdowns last week, and I still like him. I still believe he can, bounce back after basically not playing the last 2 years. But I still keep Lamb over him.
All right, let's move the lineup a little bit. Ari, you mentioned Cortland Sutton as a potential trade target. Sanch, which side are you on there? I know you're a Judy guy.
I'm a Judy guy, and like that Broncos offense just kind of, I don't know. I'm probably still keeping Lamb.
Okay, so we're split on that one. Gabe Davis.
Don't get me excited.
Ari.
I mean, I like Gabe Davis a lot. Like, I drafted him in probably over half my leagues, but I think I'd still keep Lamb in that.
Okay,
it hurts me to say the same.
Yeah, you're still looking at him as kind of a top 12 guy, even if maybe on the back end of that. I'm gonna rapid fire a couple more names going, I think, in that area right now. T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill, Mike Williams. Any of those guys or no?
All 3 for me. I would trade Lamb for.
Over CD Lamb. Okay. Ari, you feel the same?
I think not Mike Williams for me, but the other 2 I would.
T. Higgins and Tyreek. Okay, so that's about where the line is right now in terms of wide receiver swaps. And I think CD probably, there might be some leagues where he has more perceived value than like a T. Higgins, especially, since T. Higgins is banged up right now. So you might be able to get him plus maybe a piece at another position that you would like to reinforce. Tommy Donuts writing in from YouTube. I didn't read this comment before I put it up, and he is the one who called in about the Queen last week, so maybe I should be screening these before I just put them up on the air here. But cutting CD Lamb this early is the equivalent of dropping Randy
Arena, Tampa Bay. He did it so
Thank you.
early. We all clowned him, and I think he's like ranked 30. I don't know what he was thinking. Get
Tommy
that
did
comment
this?
off the screen. We're moving forward.
All right, there you have it.
Get better.
Good question, Steve in New York. Thanks for asking. General consensus advice of the show is hang in there with CD unless you can sell him for top 12 value, which you probably can't right now unless anyone's really looking to take advantage of the situation and feels better about the Cowboys than we do moving forward. Speaking of kind of buying low and taking advantage of opportunity, Jolise in California wants to know, who's your favorite buy low at running back before this week's games? So for those of you listening live, you have until tomorrow to pull the trigger on these. If you're listening tomorrow morning when we release this as a podcast, got a few hours. Maybe you can get something done. She says it feels like they all stunk last week except for Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, I guess Barkley and Swift don't exist, I guess, but
yeah, but I mean, if you're looking at kind of those top end guys in the first round, I mean, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, right, Austin Eckler, they all kind of made you wish you drafted a wide receiver in the first round. Sanch, who are you targeting before they potentially blow up this weekend or next?
Any running back, or we're talking about the top guys? Because
let's talk any running backs.
All right, I'm still in on Travis Etienne, man. I know everyone's doing the James Robinson told you so because he, of his big game, but Etienne was this close from having a monster, 2 touchdowns. I think he dropped one and Lawrence missed them. And if he ends up catching those 2, we're talking about Etienne being fantasy gold like we have been all off season. We have to remember it was still his first game in the pros, and the pains are going to be there, the growing pains, but I'm still in on Etienne with chemistry from his college quarterback and Trevor Lawrence. That Jags offense is only going to get better. I'm not the guy taking the James Robinson victory lap with the Achilles. I know he caught the nice easy touchdown. He did look good. He looked a lot better than Cam Akers coming off the Achilles. But as far as buy low after a rough week 1, everyone all over James Robinson, Etienne would be my guy there.
I saw some of those Travis Etienne usage metrics and recognized the opportunity to buy low. And in our league, I went to see who has him to see if I can kind of work something out. And I was like, it's Sanch, and it's not going to happen. So good answer. Ari, where are you at on buy low running backs?
Yeah, I'm totally with you on Etienne as well. A name I'll bring up is James Conner, who, the entire Cardinals offense was, awful last week. But, I mean, he only saw, I think, 10 carries, I think it was, because they were playing, from behind the entire game. But he still saw the usage in the passing game. With Chase Edmonds gone, he's going to see that 3-down role, on the early downs and the passing game. And I think, while I'm not huge in the Cardinals this year, I think, it's going to be better for the offense than it was last week. So James Conner is a name that I really like as even like a low in RB1 who maybe he's being traded more as an RB2 after last week.
Yeah, I love that pick. He's one of the names that I had circled and was circling kind of in drafts as well as sort of the end of that running back 1 tier where I felt comfortable if I started heavy at receiver or tight end. I was okay rolling with James Conner as kind of a mid to late running back 1, and I still am. I'm not really afraid of last week. He put up 14 half PPR points and a blowout loss against Kansas City. But, like you said, he was an absolute workhorse until that game got out of hand. He still saw 16 total opportunities with a 96% snap share while the game was still competitive. You love to see that. That's how we hoped he'd be used, right, in this offense. And maybe even more importantly, he got 6 targets and all the goal line work in that game. But, that defense is terrible. So he might be in for some more negative game scripts moving forward, but it's nice that they're throwing him the ball with Chase Edmonds out of the picture. Also want to talk about
Adams is about to go crazy against the Cardinals this week. You hear like his grandparents are coming for the first time to watch him.
I didn't hear that.
Man,
they picked a good game to do that.
Get Tay Adams in your DFS lineup. Stack him with Carr. He'd be cheap. Bounce back for the Raiders. I don't know. Arizona's defense is very bad. I see the Raiders blowing them out.
Yeah, you can put the entire Arizona secondary on Adams, and I think he'll just carry them all into the end zone with him. Also want to talk about Aaron Jones as a potential buy low. I think that people came into week 1 kind of looking for evidence to confirm the narrative that they already subscribed to of A.J. Dillon passing him this year. But Aaron Jones, I mean, he played more snaps. He ran more routes than Dillon did in week 1. He saw less opportunities, but he was more efficient with the touches that he got. And, he started last season with 7 touches in week 1. Then he had 23 the next week and went on to have a top 12 season. So Devontae Adams, speak of the devil, is gone, along with 169 targets and 11 touchdowns. I don't think it has to be a competition between Jones and Dillon. I think there's going to be, again, enough room for both of them to really eat and potentially return value as the top 12 running back. So he's somebody I think people are worried about after that week 1 performance from the last place Green Bay Packers in week 1. Also, I have a weird answer that I want to kind of give a consolation prize to here. He's one of my guys, so I'm a little biased, but Kareem Hunt, I mean, when you think buy low, you think players who had a bad week 1. Kareem Hunt was great last week. He scored 2 touchdowns. I think that there are probably managers out there with Kareem Hunt right now who think that they're selling high on him in week 1 because that might have been an anomaly. I don't think that's the case. I'm not saying he's going to score 2 touchdowns every week, but people don't believe in Kareem Hunt because he gets less opportunities than Chubb on what's perceived as a bad offense. But he gets all the valuable touches. He gets the passing work. He gets the goal line work. I think that he is a sustainable, like mid to high end running back 2 in PPR leagues. So if you can capitalize right now on a manager who thinks that they are being smart by selling him high, I don't think they're going to sell him high enough. So he might be somebody that you can go out and get right now as part of a bigger deal. And he gets the Jets. So, he might get straight up, just 10 to 15 carries on the ground while they're running out the clock this week. So those are some names for you, Jolise. Anyone else you guys want to talk about before we move on for running backs?
No, you hit the nail on the head with those guys.
All right. So kind of speaking again about those first round running backs who are looking like busts out of the gate, we got a late mailbag question this morning from Billy in New Jersey. Shout out Billy, represent New Jersey. In his longest running home league, he drafted Najee Harris, 8th overall. Oh boy. How much should I be panicking about his foot issues, and should I try to trade him before he has no value at all? So Najee Harris, I read, will be without an injury designation at home against the Patriots this week. He practiced in full on Friday, so, believe what you want about the foot. Is it real? Is it not real? He left the game a little early, I think, last week. Sanch, where are you on Najee? What's your panic meter?
Well, I'm happy to say I avoided him everywhere, and I don't own one share of Najee Harris, but this goes back to the Lamb thing. Like, what are you going to get for him at this point? If you can find like a newbie owner who will give you, a Swift or Barkley for him after their monster week 1s and doesn't do any fantasy research at all, by all means. But like,
I'm glad you bring that up though, because I feel like there are owners, managers out there who even a couple weeks into the season will make transactions based still on ADP, like how they were valued when they were drafted, and that's not the right mindset to have after you see a couple weeks of data. So you joke, but there are people out there who you could probably make that happen with.
Had to say it. You never know. Yeah. Shoot your shot, but like, I'm not getting rid of Najee for nothing. You drafted him that high. You have to wait and see. I know it's rough, but you don't want to put yourself in a hole after week 1, trading your first round pick for a guy drafted in the 3rd this early.
Ari, Najee totaled 12 touches for 26 yards in week 1. Is this the norm? Are we panicking? Should you trade him based on his name value? What's the advice here?
I mean, I wouldn't say 26 yards would be the norm, but I mean, he was a player that I was lower on than most, all offseason. I think he was like my RB12. So, like, I still thought you'd see the volume to be a low in RB1. I just didn't see, some people were taking him like number 3, number 4 overall. I just didn't see that type of upside.
Mm-hmm.
I was saying the offseason I saw a dip in targets, I thought, moving from Roethlisberger to Trubisky or Pickett. Either one isn't going to dump the ball off as much as Roethlisberger did. And then, I still had some work to the offensive line, so still inefficiency concerns. But, I still thought he would see the volume to, make up for the inefficiency. So I still think he's a low in RB1, just like a very low in RB1, not close to like mid in RB1. So, I mean, yeah, I agree. Like, it's only been 1 week, so I think there's a possibility you could get a Swift or a Mixon. Obviously, it's going to be tougher now than it was before the season. But, I mean, even if you have decent depth at like running back and you can trade him for like a Devontae Adams, some receiver like that, I would do that as well.
Worth a shot. Look, you took him 8th overall. It's not like you took him top 3. He's probably not going to sink your team. You probably paired him with a decent wide receiver mid to early 2nd round. I think that the dream of Najee seeing 25, 30 touches a game, kind of like he was creeping into last year, that's probably not realistic. And we talked about that a lot in the offseason about the effect of moving from the ghost of Ben Roethlisberger to a guy like Mitch Trubisky, who is still terrible, but is going to move out of the pocket when that offensive line collapses and he gets pressure. So, he had 10 carries, 2 targets in week 1. And I think that kind of ratio is going to be the norm moving forward. Maybe not that volume. I think he still is one of a handful of guys in the league who are going to be a workhorse on the ground and see a lot of carries. And that is not something that you should throw out just because of an inefficient week 1. We do have a caller on the line. I'm going to bring them in before we take our next mailbag question. Hey, caller, welcome to Fantasy Fanline. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Tommy Donuts from New Jersey.
Tommy Donuts, welcome back to the show. What's going on, brother?
Not much. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I hear myself in the background. Are you also watching us on the computer?
That's right, and I just muted it, so it's just us right now.
Thank you. Well, thanks for watching, and thanks for calling, and thanks for writing in. You batted for the cycle today.
I know. I have Saturdays off now, so I'm going to be more of a frequent listener.
And, good. Serious regular Tommy Donuts joining the cast of the show today.
So I want to say, Ari, I've been following you for years. I'm a huge fan, and I love what you do, and thanks for the community. Thanks for what you do to the fantasy community.
I appreciate you.
Cheers, man. So you got any questions for us today?
Yeah, I do have a question. I know you talked about Michael Pittman earlier in the show today, and unfortunately today we got the news that he's not playing. So in the league I'm in, you have an IR spot, and my question for the experts today is, who should I look at picking up right now? Like, who do you think would be available in a PPR league that I can just stash on my bench for later on in the year?
So you're not looking for a spot start this week. You're looking for the best use of that roster spot, kind of moving forward, big picture.
Yeah. So kind of like a sleeper, as in like, who do you think would still be available in a PPR league that I should just stash on my bench, and maybe he can break out this week and I can look like a genius going forward.
Excellent question, Tommy. That's the goal. Sanchi, what do you got for him?
One of those San Fran backs, man. You never know. Jordan Mason, Davis Price. If you have an opportunity to stash someone because you put Pittman on IR, scoop one up. We'll see how they use their backs there.
That's a great tip, man. Elijah Mitchell out for probably at least 8 weeks. Jeff Wilson Jr. going to get the rock in the meantime, but terrible injury history for Jeff Wilson Jr. And in the games that we've seen of him in the past year or so,
something yards a carry.
Yeah, not efficient. So, maybe he gets hurt. Maybe the coaching staff pulls him for somebody with a little more pop. That's a valuable role, whoever ends up locking it down for the long term. Great answer. Ari?
Yeah, I was going to say Jordan Mason as well. Obviously, he doesn't have the draft capital. I think he was undrafted, but he's kind of been the guy that's been talked up over Tyrion Davis Price kind of in camp. Even Adam Schefter brought it up on, Fantasy Focus the other day, so take that how you want. But, I'm not a huge believer in Jeff Wilson. I think it's possible that it's just a whole mess because Trey Lance is going to see carries, Debo's going to see carries, so it might just be a situation where, no one's really reliable. But I think that, at the end of your bench as a kind of stash and just kind of wait and see this weekend, Jordan Mason is definitely, worth the shot.
Good tip. We got a comment coming in from a friend of the show, great patron of the show, supporter of the show, Alan Wu. I literally just stashed Van Jefferson, like just now. That's a good name that I think people need to remember if you need some help at wide receiver. I don't think Allen Robinson is cooked, but there's a world where he is, and Van Jefferson is the number 2 target in that offense, right, on the Rams. And he was somebody who early in the offseason, I was taking a lot of shots on him, mock drafts. And as we got closer to the year and it became apparent that he wasn't healthy and probably wouldn't be starting the year, I didn't end up drafting him a lot. I don't think a lot of people did. But, Beckham is gone. Robinson looks terrible in week 1. Maybe throw a dart at Van Jefferson and try to get some targets and a valuable offense. Also want to throw out a couple of other wide receivers you can maybe look for. Curtis Samuel, who saw a really high target volume in week 1. He's somebody else that I think was really overlooked coming into this year because he had a weird year last year. He was hurt and inefficient, but the year before that, he looked great. And just somebody that I think a lot of people forgot about and could potentially continue to see a lot of targets moving forward. and Robbie Anderson, that new look first name spelling, new look Panthers offense, had a good week one. I don't buy it yet, but he's somebody that I'd be willing to stash if I just have a free spot and he's out there. I'll put him on my bench and I'll wait and see with Robbie Anderson, another guy who was really relevant a couple of years ago, had like an 1,100 plus yard season, so he's capable of it.
I'm out on Robbie. I'm in on Samuel. I
Okay.
will say, I don't know how your league is, but I would check for Dotson too on the Commanders. He should be stashed, but you never know. And any serious competitive league would have Kenneth Gainwell stashed. But as I said, I don't know your league, and he's back. So I would check if he's out there too. If he's out there, it's a slam dunk. Pick up the stash.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of Jahan Dotson on waivers this week just because I think he was.
No, not Kenneth Gainwell. Who am I on the Seahawks? Kenneth Walker.
Oh, Ken Walker.
That's who I'm talking about.
Ken Walker the third. Thank you very much. Don't get confused. Don't draft his dad. All good names. Ari, do you want to weigh in on any of those, or are you happy with those picks?
No, yeah, I mean, I guess I would assume that most of the guys are picked up off the waiver wire on Tuesday, Wednesday, but obviously you never know, how competitive the league is, so definitely worth bringing up just in case.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of people talk about Van Jefferson this week, even with all those other names that came off waivers, because so many people were looking at the guys who came out and produced week one. Albert writing in from YouTube, Khalil Herbert is another good stash.
For sure.
Potentially, he saw a pretty big share of the pie in week one. I don't know how much you could take away from that Bears 49ers game just because it was played in the Wizard of Oz Twister. I think I saw David Montgomery get tackled behind the line of scrimmage by Auntie M's flying house at one point. So that game was a mess. We'll see
Herbert.
what they do, and he's really good. He's a great player. And I think that on another team, he would have a really good shot at maybe getting himself I don't want to say workhorse role, but maybe first and second down at least. But yeah, if anything happened to Montgomery, Khalil Herbert would smash. So I think he's one of the more valuable handcuffs in the league, and potentially with some standalone value in a flex spot start here and there. Not that the Bears are going to be, up a couple scores in many games where they can run out the clock and give Khalil Herbert like 10 carries, but you never know.
Yeah. I love you, Greg, but you guys are in trouble.
Oh, you mean the first place Bears going against the
last place Packers?
The last place Packers, the end of our division? No.
It might get ugly. It might get ugly.
If it rains again tomorrow, we're good. Tommy, is that helpful? Are any of those guys available for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of those names were on my radar too, and it's just nice to know that even if one of those guys that you name was breakout, that's gold just to have on your bench. You might not start him right away, but you want to you want to brag to your lead mate and say, hey, listen, look what I did. I picked him off waivers, and now I'm going to be like a top 10 running back, and no one drafted him, and no one else picked him up. But
yeah, hitting those waiver wire jackpots, the absolute bragging rights for the rest of the season, and more often than not, those are the kind of moves. Those are the kind of moves that really win titles and get you into the playoffs. So good luck with those. Hope one of them hit for you.
All right, thank you very much, guys, as always.
Thanks, Tommy. Talk to you next time.
See you, man.
Yeah.
There you go. Series regular, Tommy Donuts, calling into the show. I'm going to bring up the next mailbag question here while we wait on any more callers. 618 Fanline, if anybody wants to jump on the air with us like Tommy just did. We have a question coming in from another New Jerseyan, Derek in New Jersey. Somebody offered Cordarrelle Patterson for my Deontay Johnson in full PPR. I'm pretty deep at wide receiver, but I just have, I guess this is Aaron Jones, Chase Edmonds, and Elijah Mitchell, who we just talked about getting hurt at running back. What are your thoughts? Ari, I'm going to kick this over to you first. I'm going to jump off for a second. I accidentally disconnected our phone line. I'm going to reconnect it.
I'd be looking to trade for running back for sure in your situation, but I'd be looking for a bit more higher value than Cordarrelle Patterson for Deontay Johnson. A few names. We already kind of talked about a few possibilities as buy lows, like James Conner, Travis Etienne, even someone like David Montgomery, who I know we talked about Khalil Herbert, but Montgomery still kind of dominated outside of the goal line work. Montgomery dominated the rest of that backfield last week. So, I'd definitely be looking to trade Deontay in your situation for a running back, but I'd be looking for, higher value, even though Cordero had a huge week last week. Obviously, I'd still be looking for higher value, and Connor, Montgomery, ETN are a few names that come to mind in that regard.
I caught the tail end of that while I was beeping and booping in my headphones, and it sounded like a really smart answer. Sanj, I'm gonna kick it over to you to build on that genius response by our expert guest Ari Koslow.
It was a great answer, and I would love to trade Deontay for an ETN or one of those guys you mentioned, but I don't think a good owner is going to do that. A good fantasy manager, if you're desperate, I don't mind it because we know Patterson's going to be involved. I stayed away. I was like, this guy broke out in his 8th season last year. There's no way he's going to do it again. Week 1 comes out, monster. Maybe he will do it again. I stayed away everywhere, but my eyes, I saw what I saw. And if you're really good
I think one thing that's interesting though is that Damian Williams got hurt in week 1, and before he got hurt, he was on the field more than Patterson. He's out again this week, so Patterson should see that role again this week. Maybe they have Tyler Algier active. Yeah, so I mean, obviously Patterson looked great last week, but I'm still not entirely sold on him. But maybe he
Who does he have this week? The Rams.
Yeah.
So he's going to have the backfield to himself, but that's a tough run D to go up against. So
I like him in PPR. I mean, I like Deontay way more, as Ari said, but if you're desperate and deep at wide receiver, why not? But as Ari said, try to get more than Cordero Patterson. That should be your last resort.
Yeah, this is a good situational question from Derek here because you do need the help at running back. I don't think Chase Edmonds necessarily is going to be a viable running back 2 for you. I know that's why you probably drafted Elijah Mitchell. I don't know, man. I liked what I saw from Patterson. He was 22 for 120 and 1 on the ground, and surprisingly only 3 catches on 5 targets for 16 through the air, which is how you think of Patterson providing value as a pass catcher. But he looked good as a runner against a traditionally pretty strong run defense in New Orleans, so it wouldn't shock me to see him succeed again against the Rams this week. Deontay Johnson, 12 targets, 7 catches, and 55 through the air, which also was honestly really encouraging for me because we talked before about the concerns with Najee and his targets decreasing with the quarterback change, and I thought that was also going to apply to Deontay. I think it just applied to Najee Harris. I think Deontay is still going to get a ton of targets because he's just a great wide receiver. Not that Najee's not a great pass catcher, but I think they want to use him as a running back in that system and not as an emergency, plan Z when the play blows up. So I am not trying to move away from Deontay intentionally unless I need to for the sake of bolstering my running back corpse. And I think that if Cordero Patterson is the best you can do, in your situation specifically, I am okay making that move. Patterson is somebody that we saw have a really hot start last season for the first half of the year and then kind of break down. So maybe he slows down right around the time you get Elijah Mitchell back and the timing works out. But that's kind of just speculation. Speaking of Aaron Jones, though, Nick Lodovico writing in from YouTube, wanting to know if it's too early to panic on Aaron Jones. Should I look to trade him? And if so, who would be the potential realistic targets? I mean, these are the questions that we knew we were going to get today, right? Based on week 1 guys. Is it time to panic? Should I sell while they still have some name value based on their ADP? Sanch, you're shaking your head. You're good with Aaron Jones still?
I'm good with Aaron Jones. As we said before, Green Bay needs both Jones and Dillon to smash for this team to be good. Everyone knows it. Rodgers knows it. This run game's got to get going. I think they both will. But, if someone offered me Dalvin Cook for my Aaron Jones, I'd probably take it.
People are panicking on Cook right now, too. So, Ari, consensus on Aaron Jones as well?
No, yeah, I'm completely with you guys. I'm not worried at all. I mean, obviously, if you can get a Dalvin Cook, Swift, Mixon, Barkley, those guys, I value them over Aaron Jones already. But realistically, I'm probably holding. The Packers offense is going to be better. We saw this week 1 last year with them as well. Obviously, they had Adams then, so that was a big difference. But like you guys said, they need Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon both to succeed to be good. I think offensively, just given how unproven their whole receiving core is. So yeah, I'm still totally fine with Aaron Jones as kind of like a low in RB1. And if he sees that, huge involvement in the passing game, he could even be top 5 to 7 this year.
Yeah, Nick, you might have missed this, but I just like maybe 10, 15 minutes ago talked about Aaron Jones as a potential buy low target. The Packers, the last place Green Bay Packers in the NFC North, on paper have a really great defense and are projected to be leading probably in a lot of games this year, even with kind of a void of weapons there. So I can't really think of a better situation for a running back than being on a team with a great defense and not a lot of more talented pass catchers. Because he's gonna see a lot of work in positive game scripts. He's gonna see a lot of work in negative game scripts. In theory, it didn't happen last week because that great defense paled in comparison to the Vikings offense, which I think is just gonna be ridiculous this year.
Wow!
And I think that people are writing off the Packers defense and run game based on that game. I think that's a mistake because we're gonna learn that the Vikings offense is an outlier in terms of how fast they put up points this year. I think that it just kind of caught the last place Packers off guard and punched them in the mouth.
Justin Jefferson, man. Oh
yeah,
my God.
He's not bad, that kid.
Not bad.
So no, I would hold tight on Aaron Jones, and even I would recommend buying low if you have an opportunity to do so. He's gonna do much better than he did in Week 1 moving forward. Speaking of the first place Chicago Bears, Timmy in Arizona has a question. Half PPR league. Would you prefer rest of season David Montgomery or Darrell Henderson? This is a really interesting one because you have
That's gross.
kind of a guy that we're a little worried about in Montgomery based on Week 1, and a guy whose trajectory is moving upwards based on his Week 1 performance, in Darrell Henderson, who looked like the workhorse back on the Rams all of a sudden. Ari, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I get the reasoning behind this question after Week 1, but I'm still going Montgomery. We've seen, obviously you can only trust Sean McVay's his talk so much because he's doesn't always follow through with what he says, through his words. But
Never noticed.
Yeah, I'm still not entirely sold Henderson's going to maintain that Week 1 role, all season. And obviously it was a disastrous of a week for Montgomery, but it was a tough matchup, tough weather, tough everything. Like I said before, Khalil Herbert is he's gonna be involved, but like every backfield, I always say these days uses 2 running backs. Other than the goal line work, Montgomery kind of dominated everywhere else in the backfield for Chicago last week. So I still think he's a fine RB2. And Henderson, I think you can argue holds more upside if he did maintain that role all season. But I'd rather just have the security of Montgomery kind of just knowing what his role is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because I think that the perception here is that these guys are in kind of similar workload concern splits, but on the opposite side of it. Like David Montgomery is the guy who we think is starting as the workhorse, but might cede some of that to Khalil Herbert as the season goes on. And Henderson is the guy that we think is maybe overtaking Cam Akers as the lead back on the Rams. Sancho, you also team Montgomery in this situation?
My job is easy today. You guys covered it all. I'm Montgomery on this one.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm expecting a big game this week against the Falcons for Henderson. He played 80% of the snaps in Week 1 with an 85% opportunity share, which was second in the league amongst running backs. So he didn't just slightly have the lead in that backfield. He was the guy pretty much in Week 1. He had 18 touches, 73 yards. After this week against the Falcons, he gets the Cardinals next week, who's going to run all over again if he gets the opportunity. So I've been a little higher on Henderson than most people. I think even in draft season when we thought it was going to be a 50-50 workload split, it is much closer to 60-40, 70-30 in Henderson's favor. So it kind of depends how you want to bet on the Akers situation. And we can't know that for sure. So if there's a chance that he returns to form, I think that it's Montgomery until we hear anything definitive that Henderson is our guy and we're rolling with him from the Rams. And I don't think we're ever going to get that kind of clarity. So as long as that's the situation, I give the slight nod to Montgomery. But I think that the value is pretty close. And I think that the perception of value is more heavily skewed towards David Montgomery. So the actionable takeaway here, I think, is that if you're asking this as a David Montgomery manager, you could probably get Henderson plus in a change for him if you maybe wanted to bump up your wide receiver situation or get an improvement at quarterback. I think you can do that and still get kind of similar production at the running back position from Henderson that you would have with Montgomery. So maybe an opportunity there, but if it's a straight up 1-for-1, I'm keeping Montgomery on the first place Chicago Bears. I think he's going to have an okay season.
Beautifully said, Greg.
Thank you. Did I mention that they were leading the NFC North? I'm not sure I brought that up yet.
And if you don't know, the Packers are in last place.
Oh, I hadn't heard that, Sanchi. Thanks for letting me know. I'm going to go get that tattooed on my arm. Speaking of teams going the other direction, Drew in New Jersey, the Cardinals offense scared me last week. Am I crazy for wanting to bench Hollywood, Marquise Brown, for Julio Jones with Mike Evans banged up? First of all, everybody in Tampa Bay is banged up. So just want to make sure, Drew, that you're aware that Julio has also been injured most of this week. Let me pull up my notes here to give you the exact situation. So Mike Evans and Julio both returned to practice Friday after missing practice on Thursday. So they are both presumably going to play. To what capacity, we'll see. It's a good defense. They're playing the Saints, so Evans might be locked up. Ari, what do you think of this decision?
I'm still going Marquise Brown. Like you said, even Julio's banged up as well. And I'm expecting. Normally, the Bucs Saints are kind of like a low-scoring defensive battle type of game. So, like I said earlier, I'm expecting Arizzona's offense to be better this week. Marquise Brown wasn't the player I was huge on in the offseason. But I get, early in the season while Hopkins is suspended, and also Rondell Moore is out now, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for Marquise Brown. And, the Raiders secondary is beatable, and I think that the Cardinals offense are going to be playing from behind as well, like we said before. So,
no doubt.
I'm still leaning towards Marquise Brown here.
Sanch?
I'm there too. This has to be the week for Brown, right? I think the Raiders are going to score a lot of points. This has to be the week that Hollywood has to take the top off and have those games we're used to him seeing. And as far as Mike Evans, I think he's going to play, but Lattimore has had his number. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I remember every time Mike Evans goes up against Lattimore, it's not pretty. Brady has not looked great against the Saints.
0-4 in the last couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
The Saints also hold Brady's only shutout in the past 15 years.
I'm going to call my shot while the rest of the world is thinking the Saints are going to win again. I'm going to say Brady sneaks one out, finally gets one. Ryan Suckup to end the game, calling it now. But
I think this is why Brady came back from retirement this year. He was like, I got to get one over on the Saints.
I got to beat the Saints. But yeah.
He disappeared during training camp specifically to study the Saints offense for 11 days, just to shut himself in on a mountain with the Tibetan monks just to study game film. That's my theory.
Yeah, realistically, this game could go either way. I obviously see why everyone's on the Saints. I'm just going to call the shot on Brady just to look like a genius when it happens, because I don't like to bet against Brady. But if you're going to against the Saints, it makes the most sense based on the track record. But for this situation you're in, Julio, Evans, I think you gotta play Hollywood Brown here.
Yeah, I mean, specifically, if the question is, are you crazy for wanting to do it? I don't think that you're crazy, but I wouldn't do it. Hollywood went 4 of 6 for 43-1 against a really tough Kansas City defense in Week 1. That, they gave up a big half on Thursday night against Mike Williams, obviously, but they've looked pretty solid. I wouldn't fault Marquise Brown too much for that. It was also just a weird game script in Week 1 against the Chiefs. They got the Raiders this week, who completely shut down Mike Williams in Week 1 after Keenan Allen went out with an injury. But I don't pay too much attention to stuff like that, because I don't think that they really game plan for Mike Williams to be the only wide receiver carrying that offense.
They should have.
They probably
we all
should.
saw it coming. We all saw that one coming.
You're saying they should have just expected for Allen to miss everything after the first quarter?
I'm talking about they should have prepared for Mike Williams to be the guy.
Oh,
I feel like they were throwing some soft coverage on him early on. I don't know if you guys caught that, but I feel like you just dinking and dunking to him. We knew he was going to be the guy, but that's a whole other discussion. That game was crazy. I'm sure we'll talk about it before we wrap up.
I'm gonna go Hollywood here, just because I think that the Cardinals are going to have to throw a lot to try to catch up. I think it's going to be a pretty similar situation where they fall behind big early and just have to come out firing. Hopefully he gets a long pass and a touchdown. I don't think he's going to be super efficient, but he should have the volume. So not crazy, but do start Hollywood is my official stance on that.
Should be a good week for him.
Yeah. So is it time to drop Juju Smith-Schuster and cut our losses from Jonas in Wisconsin, home of the last place Packers? Ari, what do you think about Juju? Are we abandoning ship?
I mean, I I guess you can never say like one answer because every league's different, and maybe if you're an 8 team, and if you're in like an 8 team league, then maybe. But assuming you're in a 10 to 12 plus team league, I think that this is a complete overreaction to recency bias and all that. I mean, we're just 1 week removed from week one where he was second on the team in targets and posted a respectable stat line. I think 6 for 79, I want to say, was what he did
That's
last
right.
week.
On 8 targets against an admittedly terrible Cardinals defense, as we've been talking about for the past hour. But yeah, he got the looks.
Yeah, so I mean, Mahomes does spread the ball around, so maybe he's doesn't hold the upside that some people want him to hold in this offense, but he's definitely most definitely not a player that you're going to drop unless again you're in like some super shallow league where there's some receiver on the waiver wire that most wouldn't expect, I guess.
16 leagues, they're out there, I think. I don't know if people do 6. I know people do 8.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure.
I mean, Patrick Mahomes he told us it'd be somebody different every week. This week, on Thursday night, it was nobody. Kelsey was the leading receiver from that game with 5 catches on 7 targets for 51 yards. So there's a lot of ways for the Chiefs to win football games. Fortunately for them, unfortunately for us, they have a really good defense. So, they can come and blow out teams like the Cardinals like they did in week 1 where Juju caught 6 passes, or they could keep it on the ground, grind it out, have their defense shut down opposing offenses like the Chargers. Sanch, what are your Juju thoughts? I know you were real high on him in the offseason.
Yeah, it sucks. I started him in anywhere I could. It's not great to have a low score after the Thursday night game, but I saw on Reddit, I'm going to give this guy credit, Qbert, regional champ.
Oh, shout out to Qbert. My first ever video game as a child
regional
on my
champ.
ColecoVision.
Said Bryce Callahan hasn't allowed a 50-yard slot receiver since week 8 last year. And, he's become one of the best slot corners in the league. I went and looked up that information. He's right. So shout out to Reddit. It's not all garbage and hype trains. You can get some good information on there. It's a hold. From where you took him at his ADP, you're not cutting him after one bad week against a vicious Chargers defense. They look like the real deal. They're going to be a tough matchup for anyone going down the rest of the season. And I'm holding Juju. I'm not saying you have to start him, but please don't cut him after week 2.
Yeah, there are a lot of people in the fantasy space right now trying to figure out what to do with Juju, and I think that the reason that people are asking about cutting him rather than trading and recouping some of the value like we've seen for some of the earlier questions about guys like Najee and some of the running backs, the questions about Juju aren't should I sell while I still can, it's should I drop him, and I don't think that is the solution here. That being said, I don't really think you can trade him for anything. He's a wait and see guy because I don't think that there are any, like you said, like what options on the waiver wire carry more upside than
Donovan
a guy who
Peoples-Jones. That's who you're gonna drop Juju for. I'm
like
out.
that's my point is who. I mean, there are guys out there who can have a pathway to a decent target share on their teams, but none of them have the upside of the Chiefs' offense. Tommy Donut still has his Nintendo cartridge of Qbert. I didn't realize was that N64 Super Nintendo. That's played
NES,
Qbert
man.
in arcade NES. Okay, yeah. Like I said, I had it on ColecoVision, and that's probably about the right speed for a game like Qbert. It doesn't need.
All right, Gramps.
Doesn't need graphics.
Vision?
My first ever game, my first ever cartridge, but
that's awesome.
Yeah, Juju kind of right now is the ColecoVision of this situation because it has been a long time since he flashed and was relevant, and I think people were hoping for him to kind of recapture some of that on this new situation for him. The Nintendo 64 of offense is the Chiefs, and I don't think he's ever going to get back to that kind of rookie sophomore year Juju where he was benefiting from having Antonio Brown across the field from him. But just because he's not that doesn't mean that he's not worth rostering and getting the most out of the player that he is today, which I think still a valuable piece of your offense. I started him too. He had like 3 catches for 10 yards. It sucks this week. Don't rage drop him. Don't be driven by your emotions. The
counterpoint there. The GameCube of defense is the Chargers. And they're freaking elite, man. And so is Pat Mahomes. I'm not worried. That game was wild. Herbert, like, about to die on the field. throwing 2 dots like on 4th
Well,
down.
look, we have 5 minutes. Let's talk about it. And just a reminder,
Yeah.
618 Fanline, if anybody wants to sneak in a live call or a question before we wrap up here. But did you guys both get to watch that? It was the first ever
Wasn't
Amazon
missing that one.
Prime broadcast of Thursday Night Football. Do you guys both have Prime?
I have it.
I don't, but I have my ways of.
Yeah, there are other messes. I thought that was a weird move to take it off of TV and put. I mean, I'm sure Amazon paid a fortune for it and are hoping that people are going to sign up for their service for the sake of watching Thursday Night Football. I already had Prime, but I don't know that Thursday Night Football would move the needle for me. It's like $150 a year. So I don't know. I thought that was weird from a business perspective. But
those next day deliveries hit different. You saw.
That's very helpful.
Jeff Bezos and Roger Goodell.
I did see that.
I saw a meme that like it was Bezos like talking to Goodell like, I heard Austin Eckler is a starting running back. Like, you should pay them less or something. Like, I was cracking up. It's all money. That's why
I'm right there with you, Bezos. I drafted a lot of Austin Eckler. He carried the ball 14 times for 39 yards in this game. I mean, he ended up having a pretty nice day through the air. He caught 9 for 55, which I think probably saved a lot of us in PPR.
The last drive saved them.
Oh, my God. It really did. Ari, what's your takeaway on Austin Eckler? I mean, I'm surprised we didn't get any should I panic questions about him. I think because of that late game rally and PPR formats, but he's probably maybe not going to be up there with like the Jonathan Taylors and the Christian McCaffreys, who also doesn't look like Christian McCaffrey yet this year. But what are our realistic expectations for Eckler moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, Eckler was my RB4 coming into the year. I had him behind Dalvin Cook, and I got a lot of questions as to why I had Eckler behind Cook, and this is kind of the reason, was because I thought Cook would see, a lot more overall touches just in a situation. But Eckler, he's still going to be fine. I mean, he had, I think, 20 touchdowns last year, which, was always going to regress no matter what. But he's still, in PPR leagues is going to be, going to give you a decent enough floor. I mean, the Chargers have kind of been looking for that kind of 1B for a while. So I don't think he was never going to be that kind of 20 and 25 carry type of running back every week, but he's going to make up for that in the passing game, as we saw, on Thursday. I know week 1 was a bit, of an anomaly kind of in that regard, but, week 1's always, kind of weird and, kind of fluky in some way. So, I mean, I don't think Eckler's going to be, RB1 overall, but I think he's still going to be a fine RB1 PPR.
Yeah, we expected touchdown regression. I don't think that we expected as much of a usage regression. Yeah, Sony Michel in at the goal line.
I saw someone had like a Sony Michel first touchdown score, and it was only like $10 to win like 1,000 or something like that, and then he got stopped at the one.
Looking like he would just fall in. And I don't know if you guys got that sleeper notification, but I am sad. Gabe Davis questionable for Monday night. There's 2 Monday night games. If you have Gabe Davis, you better be in your flex spot and have a backup plan.
Yeah, my phone is muted, but my next best source of news came in from Albert on YouTube, who was letting us know, because I'm sure he knows how you feel about Gabe Davis and was, I guess, concerned for your mental well-being. Wanted to make sure that we knew. Yeah, good looking out, Albert. But yeah, Gabe Davis questionable with an ankle. We'll have to stay on that. I'm sure a lot of people who listen to our show are managers of Gabe Davis because of how we spoke about him in the offseason. Yeah, but Ari, I mean, you mentioned that they've been looking for kind of a 1B or a backup running back who could consistently spell Austin Eckler. They drafted a rookie that they hoped would do it, and the negative offseason reports about him is kind of what led me to be so bullish about Austin Eckler's workload not changing much this year. I didn't really foresee them signing Sony Michel and splitting that backup role between him and Joshua Kelly. They combined for 5 carries. I mean, they didn't do a lot with them. Well, Joshua Kelly was 4 for 22, which is okay. Also combined for 5 targets. I mean, that's the kind of stuff, like, there's no one player right now who's consistently taking Eckler off the field. It's more of a backup committee. And that just, to me, says that they haven't found their backup guy, but that hasn't changed the fact that they don't want Eckler to be a 20, 25 touch per game guy anymore. And that's just not, I mean, we could have read that in the tea leaves of them drafting a guy and talking in the offseason about reducing his workload, but they talked about that last year too, and then they just didn't do it. So
yeah. You can add him to the buy lows we talked about earlier. I think he's going to be fine. That's Herbert's guy. We'll hope Herbert I know, what are they, fractured ribs or something. Like, oh, no big deal, just fractured his ribs.
It
Shoot him with
looked
something,
like it,
give him
man.
some padding. It was rough. Herbert's a warrior. That was freaking awesome on his end.
That was a guy in a lot of pain who
Yeah.
got up and then threw a 30-yard dart down the field.
That pick
These guys
six,
are just, yeah, well,
wild.
that happens. Mike Williams, 8 for 113 and 1 touchdown. I mean, if there was ever a time for him to boom, this was it, right? No Keenan Allen. I don't think we need to talk too much about Mike Williams. People are starting him. He's a stud. He's gonna disappear sometimes, but that's kind of the nature of Mike Williams. You knew what you were signing up for. Gerald Everett, though, 6 for 71. How much is that a product of the opportunity with Keenan Allen out? Is he a guy that you feel like you can regularly start moving forward, even after Allen gets back? Ari, what do you make of Gerald Everett's performance?
Yeah, I mean, I liked him as kind of the late flyer. I mean, you could have gone like the last round, second to last round, in drafts. I believe his touchdown in week 1 came also after Keenan Allen left the game, I believe. So
Mm-hmm.
I think this type of volume and opportunity was definitely, part of Keenan Allen being out. But I mean, tight end is so, shallow that, I mean, even with Keenan Allen, if he could give you 8 to 9 in PPR, I mean, that's, you can't ask for much more than that if you waited on tight end. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I still think he's a good hold, if you have him. I certainly wouldn't expect, this type of opportunity when Keenan Allen's on the field, but I think he can still be viable.
Yeah, I think you could start him as long as Allen's out, and once Allen gets back, it's kind of wait and see for me. But I almost picked him up, Sanch and our league together, where I have Cole Kmet and streamed him over Cole Kmet. And at the last second, I decided not to because I also had Mike Williams and Austin Eckler in that lineup, and I was like, that's too much. But it turns out it wasn't too much. It would have been a great play. What do you think about Everett?
Yeah, for sure. I think he went from a streamer to a bench hold at the very least.
Yeah.
It sucks he was gassed and cost that pick 6 to happen because the
crazy.
touchdown was going to him. If he got that touchdown, he would have been the most picked up tight end maybe all year. But he was getting his looks, looked pretty solid with Herbert. Herbert was looking for him. I like him. I picked him up in a bunch of leagues. He went undrafted in a lot of leagues. As we said earlier on one of our episodes, if you want to take that dart throw on tight end, give me one in a good offense who's going to move the ball, who's going to have a chance to score a lot. And Everett's in that situation with Herbert, so I'm liking him.
We don't need to spend too much time on the other side of the ball. We talked a lot about the Chiefs' receiving options already. Not really. None of them were difference makers. And I think you're going to see games like this from time to time without a guy like Tyreek Hill in that receiving game. But Patrick Mahomes, 235, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Good game by normal expectations. People with Patrick Mahomes expecting him to be week 1 Mahomes, probably a little disappointed. Obviously roll with him. There's no actionable takeaway from that. You're not going to get rid of Mahomes. Travis Kelce, 5 for 51. I think the guy with the most questions on this team is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Looked good again as a player with your eyeballs. He carried the ball 8 times for 74 yards. He had 1 big carry for 52 yards and caught another 4 passes for 44. So is the Clyde Edwards-Helaire redemption tour legit, Ari?
I mean, they still use McKinnon a lot as well, in that backfield.
Yeah.
We didn't really see Pacheco, so I think last week his usage was more of just the game, being a blowout at that point. But
garbage time, yeah.
But I mean, I think Clyde can be a decent RB2 PPR. I don't think he's ever going to be what people want him to be his rookie year, where he was going sometimes in the first round, with all that hype.
Yeah.
As long as McKinnon's healthy, I think his upside's going to be capped a bit. But he's definitely looked good the first 2 weeks, and I think he's going to kind of need to rely on efficiency, which he has been able to do so far, just given McKinnon's role. But Clyde has looked good, and we'll see if he can keep that up.
Yeah, McKinnon's
passing the eye test for sure.
McKinnon's not crazy involved. I mean, he caught a touchdown, and you look at his carries, it's like, oh, he only had 4 carries, but Clyde only had 8. So, it's only a 2-to-1 ratio.
Made the most of them.
He sure did, man. People forget, though, that Clyde, was hurt a lot last year. I don't know that we forget it so much as we didn't really know until hindsight after the fact that we heard he had, what was it, like a gallbladder or something, that he had like a surgery in the offseason and he came in like 15, 20 pounds underweight. And it's hard to catch back up on that kind of stuff in season. but he looks good. He looks healthy. He looks like the guy that they drafted him hoping that he would be, and he plays a really important role in this offense. Sanch, any kind of overarching thoughts on Clyde before we wrap up our show here?
Nah, great RB2 in PPR, as I already said. He looks really good. He's on a Mahomes-led offense. He'll have opportunities to score. He's not going to give you huge games every week, but someone I wouldn't mind having in my lineup as my RB2. If you have him as a flex, that's cash money.
Well, there you have it, folks. I want to thank our guest again, Ari Koslow. Ari, this was a lot of fun, man. He is the #1 interactive fantasy football page on Instagram. You can find him there at fantasy.footballexpert. Ari, you want to take one more chance and plug your channel over there before we wrap up?
No, yeah, I mean, that's just what I'm doing for now is Instagram, fantasy.footballexpert, like you said. Thank you guys for having me on. I had a lot of fun, and yeah, hopefully we can do it again.
Yeah, you also have a live video show on YouTube, I think. I want to give that a shout out, right? AKP Sports Talk. I watched your last week episode. You guys broke down a couple days ago the week 2 matchups, and you guys were spot on with your call for the Chiefs over the Chargers. You specifically said that it wouldn't be a blowout, and this game was going to be closer, I think, than people might expect after the week 1 for the Cardinals. So no surprise. Ari knows his stuff. Find him over there. Follow him on Instagram. Sanch, any final words for Ari before I give the closing spiel here?
Ari, you're the man. Keep doing what you're doing. We would love to have you back on whenever you have the time, bud.
Please. There you have it. So we'll be live with another expert guest next week and every Saturday at 2 p.m. for the rest of the season. You can subscribe to and stream Fantasy Fanline live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, wherever you're watching us today. Make sure you like us, hit the bell, subscribe so you never miss a show, and find our show the next day on your favorite podcast platform. You can follow us on all social platforms at Fantasy Fanline. Visit our website, fantasyfanline.com, for a schedule of our upcoming guests and to submit a question to our mailbag if you can't join us live for the next show. You could support us like our good friend Alan Wu over on Patreon, patreon.com/fantasyfanline. You could earn yourself some perks, like live shout-outs on the show, like we're giving to Al every week. Priority call-in codes, you could jump to the front of the line, and you could join a listener league with our hosts and guests that we will put together as soon as we have enough people supporting the show. So yeah, you could be in the OG listener league for Fantasy Fanline. Nobody could ever take that away from you for the rest of your life. That's all we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We will talk to you next time on Fantasy Fanline. Goodbye.